Believe the 13% of the population and 50% of the crime, you need to get fact-checked, and I'm about to do it to you. In 2016, white people committed 70% of the convicted crime, and black people only committed 27%. Then in 2017, white people committed 68% of the reported crime, and black people only committed 26% of it. And in 2024, white people committed 53% of the reported crime, while black people only committed 25%. So this narrative on 13% of the population, 50% of the crime is wrong. You know who actually commits 50% of the crime? White people. But guess what stat black people are 13% of the population and 50% in? Exonerations. You know, when they're wrongly convicted, all you're doing by spreading this fake fact is allowing more people to profile and be racist towards black people. You know what's the highest percentage of people who are victims of white people? Black people. And if you look at all the shootings, guess who are the shooters? White dudes.
Welcome back. Now, that's
Hello everyone, I'm Nobu and welcome back to the channel. What happens when young white Americans start questioning the story they were raised to believe? Recently, white Gen Z creators and activists have been speaking up. They are challenging long-standing narrative about crimes in America, especially the way crimes is often linked to race, and not everyone is happy about that. Some people are calling it betrayal. For decades, certain political figures and media outlets have pushed the idea that crime in America is mainly a racial issue. But Gen Z, they are digging into the data themselves. They are pointing out that crime is strongly connected to poverty, lack of opportunities, and systemic inequality, not skin color. Many of them are openly rejecting white supremacy and racial fear-based messaging. This shit is causing tension. Older generations who grow up believing one narrative feel challenged. Social media debates are exploding. Some call it white rage, others call it accountability. The truth is, Gen Z grow up in digital world. They have access to information instantly. They are comparing statistics, listening to different voices, and questioning everything, including their own communities. And when young Americans publicly reject white supremacy, it disrupts the idea that everyone silently agrees.
White dudes.
They're hardcore. They're not going to be good. In 10 years, in 20 years, in 2 years, they're going to be criminals. They were born to be criminals, frankly. They were born to be criminals.
And I want to speak directly to our children as well. And please hear me loud and clear. Do not listen to what Donald Trump called you yesterday. When the president from the Oval Office calls you natural-born killers, children who are born to be violent, I say this: I respect the office, but I will never honor ignorance. To our children, you are loved and you're needed. To our children, we believe in you and we invest in you. To our children, we love you and we are going to honor every God-honored potential that you have. To our children, there's nothing we won't do to keep you safe. To our children, we love you and we are going to make sure that you are never bullied. And I don't care what position they hold. Because I want to be clear, when I was coming up, if I listened to the tropes and to the trolls, if I listened to the haters and the heartless, if I listened to the Archie Bunker mindset and the dog whistling, if I spent my time focusing on those people who did not love me instead of focusing on those people who do, I would never be the 63rd governor of the state of Maryland and the only black governor in the United States of America.
White people, if crime statistics really mattered to us, we would be talking about white men every damn day. We as white people love to throw around statistics when it comes to the black community. We love to misconstrue data about poverty rates, crime rates, single-parent households. Here's the thing. If you really want to talk about problematic behavior in terms of statistics, we need to talk about white men. Most mass shootings in America, white men. School shootings, white men. Intimate partner violence, typically known as domestic violence, white men. Police brutality and systemic violence, white men. Online harassment and extremism, white men. Domestic terrorism, white men. Serial killers, white men. The demographic making up the vast majority of CEOs, judges, senators, and police chiefs who refuse to hold white men responsible, white men. And yet us white men are really talked about as being a problem. Few white people are asking what's wrong with white men, what's wrong with the culture. Few white men are demanding that we be fixed. And why? Because we as white men humanize and individualize white violent offenders. And it's time to flip the script. To shame and blame, because I know white males are incredibly fragile when it comes to that, but instead to name what's really going on and who continues to be protected and not held accountable because of selective storytelling. I hope this helps.
I'm gonna dumb it down. The US has a population of 330 million people, right? 55% of that is white. So that means there's 181 million white people and 42 million black people because we're only 13%. If 50% of black people are committing crimes, that would mean there would be 21 million black criminals. And if 30% of white people are committing crimes, that would mean there would be 54 million white people. So the number is higher. There would be more white criminals than there could ever be black criminals. Even if 100% of black people were committing crimes, it would only equal 42 million black people to your 54 million white criminals. I don't know what's not making sense. The number is still higher. There's a higher number of white criminals than there could ever be a number of black criminals.
I keep seeing a lot of political commentators and uninformed individuals talk about how black people, despite being 13% of the population, commit 50% of the crimes. However, that is actually far from the truth, and I think it is important to debunk that. But unfortunately, a lot of people frame it in a way that they're trying to make black people appear to be more violent in order to justify racism and discrimination, as well as hate speech against black people. But this statistics is actually not based on reality for the most part. But there are actually a lot of confounding variables because black people are actually 8 times more likely to be arrested of a crime they did not commit. And you can find this study in many different sources. And according to many different estimates, 10% of people arrested are convicted of a crime they did not commit. And knowing that black people do indeed make up a large section of this population changes the nature of the stat. Next is the documented over-policing of black concentrated areas. Because black areas are disproportionately more likely to be over-policed, this also means that black people who do commit crimes are disproportionately more likely to be caught, which also influences the data set in a way that is aside from the true crime rate. Taking these two factors into account is going to significantly shed light into the nature of these data, and it does also significantly explain the overrepresentation. And the other thing is that, according to many studies, crime is more significantly correlated with poverty more than any other thing, including race. And unfortunately, due to historical disparities, black concentrated areas are more likely to be subjugated to poverty, which naturally increases the crime rate in black concentrated areas. And that's aside the fact that the 30-50 stats is not even true, unless you're only looking at robbery. In fact, if we're broadening the scope to all crimes, black people would make 29% of all the arrests. But knowing all these factors does indeed change the implication of the very misinformed stats that we oftentimes hear. It does also show how a lot of factors that are not specific or intrinsic to race influence the data sets. And correlation is not causation. And I think this is something that is important to bring light to.
Every time racist people bring up the violence or crime rates in the black community, I always like to remind them of who's committing the most CSAM crimes. And if you don't know what CSAM stands for, it means child sexual abuse material. And I need people to understand there is a reason why people who are pedophiles or pedophiles get such short time, but somebody who is on drugs or sold drugs gets such an exorbitant amount of drugs, because there was this idea that the selling drugs or doing drugs at one point in time only affected black people, but when they started to see how many white people it was affecting, that's when they started decriminalizing it. It's the same thing with pedophiles. Most of the pedophiles or the CSAM people who are committing those crimes, what color are they? That's why they get such a short amount of time. And yes, violent crime is bad, but to me, committing violent crimes or crimes against children is one of the worst possible things that you can do. So I always bring that up every time they talk about, oh, your community has all this crime. I'm like, well, your community has all this CSAM that y'all decriminalize, and on top of decriminalizing it, they have private prisons, but they're not able to put people in the private prisons like they used to, because I believe the crime rates are going down. But one girl said if they actually started filling the prisons up with people who committed CSAM and pedophiles against children, who do you think would be filling these prisons? White men. Why do you think for a lot of grape kits that they don't test them. I've heard of grape kits just sitting there for years. Who do you think it's going to come out the assailants were of the grape victims if they actually really started testing these grape kits? What color do you think they're going to be? Probably white men. That's why they don't test it. They don't want to put their own behind bars, and chances are a lot of these white men in positions of power have done those things. So next time somebody talks about the violent crime rates, you better talk about the CSAM. You better talk about the things that they do to children.
Despite making up 13% of the population, Black people commit more than 50% of crimes. Number 1, shut up. Number 2, the statistic is racist. And number 3, I'm going to explain why to other white people who are stupid to not understand what this means. Number 1, Black communities are heavily over-policed, meaning they are more likely to be targeted by police officers than people who are, say, white. The second reason, white people have more connections to police officers around the country, meaning that if they are arrested, it's easier for them to get off and have nothing on their record. The third reason is that if you don't know this, the CIA actually did introduce drugs to low-income Black areas. Not to mention, the first police department in America was designed to be a, quote, slave patrol to bring an enslaved person back to that plantation. So if you have any critical thinking skills at all, you would understand it's not that Black people commit more crimes, it is that they are arrested, prosecuted, and treated inhumanely to the point that they are vastly overrepresented in our prisons.
Look, you can't argue with the facts, okay? Black people just commit more violent crime. Check the FBI statistics. I bet. So let's see what we got here. Who commits the most rapes? White people. How about aggravated assault? White people. Motor vehicle theft? White people. Arson? No, still white people. Okay, burglary. That's got to be more it's white people. Larceny, theft, now that is obviously white people. Vandalism. Surely vandalism is white people. In fact, it looks like the only thing here that Black people lead in is robbery and murder. Aha, you say. Well, murder, there you go. Murder's the most violent crime of all, right? Black people are more murderers. Well, these stats are just based on arrest. They don't take into account people who are later exonerated, or even take into account that some people commit more than one crime. So it's a fallacy to assume that each and every one of these crimes represents a different Black person who did them. But fine, let's play it that way. In 2017, there were a little over 9,400 murders, a little over half of which were Black people. So if you divide number of murderers by total number of Black people, it's less than 1% of the Black population.
African Americans make up 13% of the population, but commit 50% of the murders.
Alright, I wasn't planning on talking about what I thought was like a 20-year-old talking point, but I guess I am, so here we go.
One possible explanation is the poverty and inequality the Black community faces, but that's not it. According to studies, the most affluent Blacks have a higher murder rate than the most impoverished whites.
First off, what is this study? People who make over 85 grand are the wealthiest Americans? That is literally the third lowest tax bracket.
I guess this does make me wonder if there is an inherent difference between poor Black communities and poor white communities.
Well, I guess we should look at where poor white people live. Mountain Mama. And the poorest county in West Virginia is McDowell, which is indeed very, very white. Here's McDowell, right over here. Now, why would this county, almost 3 hours away from the nearest city with at least 100,000 people, have a lower crime rate than some of the most densely populated places in the country? It's a real mystery, counselor. I mean, why haven't street gangs, by the way, are responsible for 13% of all homicides, taken advantage of the open drug market that is Kimball, West Virginia, population 145. For contrast, here is Highbridge, one of the poorest neighborhoods in the New York City in the South Bronx, and right over here is Columbia University, literally 3 miles away.
So you're right, it isn't just poverty, but Black people don't just live in poor neighborhoods, they live in poor neighborhoods that are adjacent to wealth. It is the proximity to wealth inequality that makes the difference between poor white neighborhoods and poor Black neighborhoods. How would you even go about committing a crime in a small rural town? Who are you going to rob? Everybody knows you. There's one gas station that's probably 2 blocks away from your house. Also, do these studies take into account the fact that cost of living is much, much lower in poor rural neighborhoods than it is in urban neighborhoods? I don't know.
Another answer is racial bias in policing, but there's a few things wrong with this. First off, according to victim reports, the Black arrest rate tracks pretty closely to the offense rate.
What is even the point you're trying to make here? I don't even understand.
When people bring up over-policing, it's not just, oh, they are catching too many crimes. It's that when you over-police communities, it builds distrust between law enforcement and the communities that live there. And if you do not trust the people that are assigned there to protect you, who are you going to turn to for protection? A lot of people don't realize that gangs don't survive just off of social status. Very often, they act as a de facto police in communities that no longer trust their police. Because if you get robbed or wrong in some way and you cannot rely on the police to help you, you're going to need to find some other form of security. This is often why gangs are often the strongest in communities that are the most over-policed, because these are the communities that trust the police the least, and so therefore rely on their own quote-unquote community police the most.
Second, in 2021, blacks were actually slightly more likely to call the police than other races.
I can't for the life of me find whatever this is referring to because this is just a stock video. If your point is that black people are more likely to call the police after a crime, no, they are not.
And third, police are actually slightly more likely to kill a white man than they are a black man.
I found this thread and I think I see what's going on here. Which I noticed more so here when he tried to show that white people were more likely to be killed when unarmed as opposed to black people.
The issue is he is comparing the amount of people who are killed by police to the rate of violent crime. But the thing is, the overwhelming majority of people that are killed by police are not committing a violent crime.
In 2022, 55% of the killings were traffic stops, police responding to mental health crises, or situations where the person was not reportedly threatening anyone with a gun. Most killings began with police responding to non-violent offenses. 380 out of the approximately 1,200 were in response to violent crimes. Have we forgotten that the uproar in police brutality follows instances in which people that are not violent are being murdered by police? Have we forgotten? Have we forgotten? Have we forgotten? Have we forgotten? I guess so.
If anything, this kind of proves the opposite point. If he is showing that the murders by police and violent crime rate are not correlated, then that would seem to imply that they're not connected because these are two different groups of people.
What about our history of slavery and Jim Crow? Again, no. Asian Americans are subject to Jim Crow as well, and though they were never enslaved, they were imprisoned en masse during World War II.
Damn, you're right. I'll be honest, I forgot about that, you know? Japanese internment, 4 years, that's a long time. Anyways, what was I talking about? I forgot.
All of this suggests that there is a biological reason that...
Dude! What are you doing? You're supposed to say it's because of the culture.
This isn't just about crime statistics, it's about a generational shift. Gen Z is showing that conversation about race, power, and history are changing. Whether people like it or not, the old narrative are being questioned. The real question is this division or is it progress? Let me know your think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.